Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I want to share with you a very powerful testimonial on manifestation where a man was losing his business. His business was failing and he needed a specific amount of money to keep the doors open, and he knew of Neville Goddard's teachings, but he never actually used it. He was very skeptical about how imagination creates reality, but in his desperation, he had no other choice but to give it a try. And what he found was that Neville Goddard's thesis or Neville Goddard's teachings actually work, and he did this exercise throughout the day. He actually did this during the day for 3 days, and he got results. This testimonial comes from Neville Goddard's Law and the Promise, chapter 11, The Potter. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump right into this testimonial. Okay, so this man was running a small business and he was solely owned. And a few years ago, it seemed that his venture would end or his business would fail. For some months, sales had fallen steadily and he found himself in a financial jam, along with many other businesses, because they were actually experiencing a minor recession at this time. So that's one of the main reasons why this business was failing and many other businesses. Okay, so he was badly in debt and needed at least $3,000 almost immediately. And even his auditors were advising him or telling him to close down his business and close his doors and try to salvage what he could. But instead of doing all this, taking that advice, he decided to turn to his imagination, to use his imagination, because he knew of Neville Goddard's teaching, but had never actually attempted to solve any problem with his imagination or in this manner. And he was frankly skeptical. So he was really skeptical. He had gone to Neville Goddard's lectures. He had watched what Neville Goddard, or listened to Neville Goddard, what he was saying about imagination creates reality. And whatever you want, you can just visualize it and think from it, or imagine your scene from the end state and then live in that state and fall asleep in that state and it'll happen. But this guy, he was very, very skeptical of this. However, his desperation forced him to test Neville Goddard's thesis or teaching, which is imagination creates reality. All right, so this is what his imagined scene was here. This is what he did for 3 nights. We're going to get into that right here. I imagined my office receiving $4,000 unexpectedly in remittances due. This money would have to come from new orders, as my accounts receivable were practically non-existent, but this seemed so far-fetched as I hadn't received this much in sales during the last 4 months or more. Nevertheless, I kept my imaginal picture of receiving this amount of money steadily before me for 3 days. So in this exercise, he's not imagining before he goes to sleep. So he's just kind of doing a meditative state throughout the day and then picturing this. Picturing and imagining this happening to him throughout the day. And he's doing this for 3 entire days. Then early the 4th morning, a customer that he had not heard from in months called him on the telephone asking him to come and see him personally. And the quotation was months old, but he dug it out of his files and lost no time in arriving at his office that day. He wrote out the order, which the man signed, but he also saw no immediate help for himself in the transaction, as the equipment he wanted would take from 4 to 6 months to deliver. And of course, the customer did not have to pay until the equipment was delivered. So he thanked him for the order and rose to leave. But the man stopped him at the door and handed him a check for a little over $4,000, saying, "I want to pay for the merchandise right now in advance for tax purposes, you know. You don't mind, right?" He said, "No, I don't mind. I realized what had happened the moment I took the check into my hands. Within 3 days, my imaginal act had done for me what I hadn't been able to do in months of desperate financial shuffling." Okay, so essentially this man was running a business. He was running a business. He knew of the power of imagination because he was attending Neville Goddard's lectures. He had a failing business. His business didn't even make $4,000 in the last 4 months, but he needed $4,000 to keep his doors open. So in his desperation, he used Neville Goddard's techniques, and he did this for 3 days. He didn't fall asleep. He didn't do it right before he fell asleep, but he said he constantly kept this imaginal act or this scene in his mind throughout the day for 3 days. So whenever he had a chance, he was visualizing, maybe closing his eyes or even doing it while his eyes were open, just imagining the scene, feeling the scene to be real right now, that somebody was giving him or handing him a check or this amount of money for $4,000, exactly the way that it panned out. So he did this for 3 nights. The 4th day, he had a customer which came in and actually purchased a certain amount of equipment that actually came out to exactly $4,000, which is very, very specific. And it was the exact amount that he was receiving in his imagination, in his imaginal act. Okay, so when he was imagining this throughout the day, when he was actually visualizing this throughout the day and keeping that picture alive within him during the day, what that does is it's carrying over to when he's actually going to sleep. But the subconscious mind is absorbing this information and this new feeling state that he had throughout the day. But ultimately, it was leading him up to when he went to sleep. Because if you're doing something all day long, you're changing that concept of yourself. You're impressing that feeling that you now have this, and you're doing it all day long. So you're carrying that feeling all the way to when you're going to sleep. So whether you're doing it right before you go to sleep or you're doing it throughout the day, you're creating a feeling state that's going to be impressed into the subconscious mind. So I think this is a really good exercise that anyone can try. So you may have been watching these videos, you may be watching the different techniques or listening to Neville Goddard's lectures, and you've been wanting to use this, but you really haven't had a situation where you've actually really used it. So I want you to use this exercise and just, if there's something that you're trying to manifest into your world, or something you wanted to create, just capture that feeling throughout the day. Just create a visual scene in your imagination, or affirm it or write it down as if it's already done, and do that just a few times during the day. That implies that your manifestation is now complete. Now you already have it. And what would you feel if you already had that thing, whatever it is, whether it's a certain amount of money like this testimonial right here, whether it's a relationship, a new car, a new house, whatever you're trying to do, or you're trying to help somebody else out, use that. Do this for 3 days. Even if it's something small that you're trying to create, just do this for 3 days. Just bring up that feeling that if you want to imagine it, however you want to feel it, if you feel better affirming or writing it down or scripting, or if you're good at visualizing or mentally rehearsing, just create that visual scene and create that feeling state throughout the day, just periodically. Maybe set timers on your watch or your phone and do this, maybe 5 to 10 times a day. Just feel it. Just absorb yourself in the feeling of now having that thing, and just keep doing that throughout the day. Do it for 3 days and see what happens. And I can tell you from my own experience that it's very, very, very effective. All right, guys, I love you guys very much. That is the end of this video. And don't forget to give me one thing you guys are grateful for, or leave anything in the column box below in the comments that you want me to read for content purposes for the future. Just go ahead and leave that in the column box below. I read all of the comments. All right, guys, I love you, and I'll see you in the next video.
Whole body dances to the rhythm of the eternal God.